You made it. I gave you a baby table. Well,
Good evening, everyone. We want to welcome you to our Southwood City Council. Today is June 14th, 2020, and it is exactly 6 o'clock. So we'll begin with the pledge by Councilman Halverson.
Please stand and repeat after me. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We would like to introduce you to a couple of new employees. Yeah, Harry actually has some time in the we'll have her come next meeting. Let's have Blake with us now. So we got Blake first. We'd like to welcome you to the board. Forward to work with our team and appreciate you being here. Great. Go. Thank you so much.
We're not going to ask for questions.
Working in the public works, so it's great.
You might give your life history.
Anybody want to fire a question? Okay.
Is the green light on?
Yes.
Yep, it's working.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, I am Blake Sturgis, latest appointed in the Southwood City Public Works Department. Guys got any questions for me?
Wow.
Would you prefer the ocean or the mountains?
The mountains.
Would you rather live on a boat or live in a tent? And how do you feel about your parents?
You don't have to.
You do not have to. We like honesty. You do not have to answer that question.
They did a good job.
Well, welcome.
Yes,
Just so we know, Blake, actually,
When you found first thing again, I got no for him and I got that's what it was.
Like, hey, you can't use the last name, sir.
yeah, funny. Different last names.
That's what it was about.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Mike. You don't have that.
You can also hang
Probably go eat dinner. That was nice meeting you all.
out.
Okay, our consent agenda consists of minutes from May 10th, May 24th, of 2022. So let's do our public comments. You don't want to ever.
No, that's right.
So let's go with the public comments. If you got some,
Public comment has to do with the after page 18 and 138 in the 24-day minutes. It shows that what is written as minutes. I believe this representation misses the main thrust of my comment. This is the fact that I stated both city code and gateway, and the gateway development agreement allow only 30 units. Thus, the importance of 30 versus 31. I made this statement to read and to add to the end of this, both city code and gateway development agreement allow only 30 units. B. Has to do with the gateway. In the text of paragraph 11, it says, Councilwoman referencing Paul Stern's public comment. It should read, Councilwoman Alberts is independent. Councilwoman Alberts is the individual who made this comment, so that's a bit of an issue. Number 2, on the Frederick's assessment, the word access is used rather than assess in the intro of the text. Otherwise, I consider it excellent presentation that shows a high degree of compliance. That's that. And third comment has to do with the discussion on the noise ordinance. And this reference page is, well, it's actually page 149. The SLM must be calibrated according to manufacturer specifications. Please note, this is the first use of this acronym in the text. This was discussed in the last week. As previously discussed, it's improper to use an acronym for the first time and not define it at that time. The fact that there is a definition section in this proposed city ordinance does not mean an acronym should not be defined at its first use. I have mentioned this before, and Mayor Westbrook agreed that just having definition section is not adequate for the text in the city ordinance. Thank you.
thank you, Paul.
At some point, maybe once a quarter, it'd be nice if the council and Ken could update the citizens regarding how people are signing, what's the status, what's happening. Thank you.
Michael? Anyone else? Okay, now we'll move on to our items. Consent agenda. For the May 2021, 2024, 2022. Check register and April election actual. Questions on this or ask for a motion?
Yes, I would have that. We gave up to catch that. Anything else? Oh, I have some questions about the register. Sorry. One of the questions I had was the first charge on the register. register for the 60,243. The GL account for that was for other projects and streets. And I think it was just for public works building design. Is that part of the design element or is that actual construction?
That was part of the fence construction. So to this point, expenses for the public works purchase, activity on that site has all been attributed.
Okay, so is this the first, I think it was 100,000 was budgeted for the design. So is this 63,000 in addition to other charges or?
The design is separate from the 60,000. The 60,000 was just for the fencing, a portion of the payment for the fencing project. 3XL, the company that's doing that project for us.
Okay. But it came from capital projects, streets. Or because there's just the three that are listed there in the budget. I'm sorry, I can't pull it up right here. I have to pull up my here. It would be just in our budget.
And to this point, the costs associated with the public works has come out of capital projects and been attributed to the streets department. Once a decision is made on bonding or financing a project, and we can attribute all of those costs across the different funds, then that will iron itself out and we'll be able to.
And that's
give it proportionate.
That's the fund we budgeted for the fence, Murray King's Pond, all of that.
Which streets? There's three line items under streets. Sorry. When I'm going there, I was wondering if you could also about property taxes. If we are on track for the estimated amount that we have or the budgeted amount that we have, how are we looking on that?
We're on track for the budget. I've reviewed them and both property tax for the current year and the prior year are currently just a little bit above what was budgeted.
Okay.
So they are on track. Generally, property tax comes in under what we budget because we budget according to the certified tax rate, and there are some adjustments and collections amounts happen in the same fiscal year. Some people pay late, and so this is one of those years where we'll get the target that was projected to be within by the county for the current year, and we're ahead of slightly behind the prior collection.
I'll take it. I'm sure it's fine. So on that note, is there anything else that we need to cover? Okay, I'll make that motion. The mayor, I move to amend to approve the consent agenda with the changes of adding council members. Resolution 22-25. And then with the minutes, your comments were added to the record, is that correct? That you typed up that way?
It was my entire presentation there. We typically read just a minute.
And then the adjustment on the city code and gate development agreement only allow 30 units should be added under policy or comment.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Next item. Resolution 22-26, adopt proposed certified tax rate. So we got some discussion about
Just an introduction.
Yeah, let me explain other information that's come in the last week or so. That we met with. So Matt represented the city at a county-wide meeting with the county. They gave us information on the proposed certified tax. So the typical process that we go through is we have our tax rate from last year. And then based on valuation of properties in the current year, the tax rate adjusts based on county calculations. It will give us the same amount of property tax revenue year to year, minus any growth or new homes or new development that takes place. So property taxes revenue that the city receives generally stays fairly stagnant at the same amount year to year. As the property valuations go up and the tax rate adjusts down by the county each year, they propose that to us, they give that in what's called certified tax rate. Certified tax rate that the county gave us this year would be 0.001158. Our current rate is 0.001522. So the certified tax rate is 24% lower than what our current rate was charged last year of the city. As we've talked over the last few years about the idea of not eroding our tax rate, keeping our tax rate the same, maintaining our tax rate, which is what we did last year. We maintained our tax rate and then added the paramedic rate on top of that. That's what we've got currently. And in the tentative budget, the council had said we would like to maintain our current tax rate. So the process for that is anytime that you do not accept the county's proposed certified tax rate, then you go through the truth and taxation process. So if the council were to hold the current rate that we had last year or do anything else other than what the certified tax rate is proposed by the county, then the city would go through the truth and taxation process. We would have to go back to the proposed rate, which was on the agenda tonight, to select the proposed rate that would be published in the state law requirements of publication and public process, which would necessitate a public hearing, truth and taxation public hearing on August 9th, here in this building at 6 o'clock. And the council would then, before the end of August, have to adopt a final certified tax rate. And so that's the process. Again, the proposed certified tax rate for the county is 24% lower than what our current tax rate is. The reason for that is because in our calculation of tax rate times value equals revenue, the value of the homes has shifted dramatically. Last year, the average home price in South Weaver was $410,000. This year, the average home price in South Weaver is $560,000, an increase of $150,000. So, all of that being said, our philosophy that was discussed previously of holding our rate so that we don't erode our buying power, so that we capture inflation, means that we would have a 31.4% increase from the proposed certified tax rate. Which means that number is important because if we were to hold our rate and go through the truth and taxation process of previous plan, the city would be required to publish a 31.4% tax increase by maintaining our rate, because the city would receive that amount in additional revenue. So the certified tax rate is projected to bring the city $950,000. The budget as it currently stands, and as the council adopted, we showed $1 million, just a difference of $20,000. The actual estimate of holding our rate, because we've just been working on estimates to this point, the actual estimate from the county, based on valuations of our current rate, projects $1,289,000 in actual revenue projected if we hold the rate. So again, a 31.4% increase from the amount that we would receive on the proposed certified tax rate. So that's all background information. If the council were to adopt the certified tax rate, then our budget would go down by $20,000 from what was the tentative budget. And we would have to adjust that, which would be fairly minor, actually. One of the line items that we have is helping to increase our fund balance from the 25% previous allowance to 35%. So some amount would decrease there by $20,000. So that would be a fairly minor adjustment. Or as we said, holding the current rate would be the 1.2 rate number, which would go through the taxation process. Of course, you could select another amount. As city staff, we've looked at what if we adopted a rate that did give us our exact budget number, that 1 million number. Then we would be publishing to the community a 2% property tax increase off of the proposed certified rate, but an actual 22% decrease from last year's rate. So we're getting into some of the confusing elements of property taxes and how it works, but an effective tax decrease of 22% from last year's rate, but a published 2% increase to the community off of the proposed certified tax rate. Or we could select something based on kind of a CPI or some other kind of inflationary number that could be there. If we were to propose a 10% increase that was published to the community, that would get us $1,078,000, and we would effectively be decreasing their tax rate by 16%, but still publishing that 10% increase number. So again, there's kind of a lot of nuance to this conversation. I don't know if that changes the council's philosophy of holding the rate and making sure that we're not eroding buying power of the city and letting that tax rate decrease year by year through the proposed certified tax rate process. But I'm happy to answer any questions about those numbers. I know that's a lot of numbers and a lot of data. That's some background information. What has changed in the last week with understanding more of the proposed certified tax rate and our actual holding the rate and what those revenue numbers will be and what the truth in taxation publication amounts to.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. So just for clarification, in the packet, it has the proposed rate of 0.001522. You said the county rate that has been allotted to us would be 0.001158. Okay. And that
For information purposes, that's a similar rate and similar ballpark of 2003. That's the same rate, not exactly, but in the range.
okay. And that gives us 921,000, right?
The certified rate, the 1158,
Yeah.
projects 980,100.
Oh, I changed my 2 million.
The current rate projects 1,289,000.
Okay. Thank you. And then I don't feel like we really need to increase it to the proposed tax rate of the 0.001522.
Increases or hold.
It would be, yeah, I hate this because it's so convoluted.
Let me give one option here. If the council were to adopt the county's certified tax rate, that needs to be done before the 22nd of June. So by the 21st. If the council wants to do anything other than a certified tax rate, then you can select a proposed rate. We would adopt that, and then it goes to the truth taxation process. Anything other than a certified tax rate. You have time to digest that a little bit, but it would also require a publication of truth taxation.
I'm ready to go. Well, I'm a big proponent of upholding our tax rate. And I've pushed that since I've been on council. But that's before property taxes went up, or property values went up like they did this year. I would be more of a proponent of reducing our rate, but still holding it to the taxation hearing. All those red vaccine now, I'm going to the 10% increase, which is an actual decrease of our tax rate, which would be the 001. Oh, I'm sorry. I had it written down.
001, 181.
Yeah, that's the one.
Dave, can you, I think this, we were just talking before in coach meeting, can you give us the years of just the rate? So 0.001158 was roughly 2004 tax rate. The 0.01522 would be roughly what? A year frame. Is that what that?
0011582.
Yeah.
You mean 152?
1522.
Which would be, that's holding our rate.
That's the current rate. That's not- That, yeah, I don't know how to do that.
About 0.00.
I know that the city was 1.4 range, 1.44 range, in the mid-90s.
144 was in 90s.
So we're looking at most likely early 90s to late 80s for the last.
That's why property taxes are hard, because the public thinks you're in, every time they see the property taxes go up, most people are increasing the percentage that they're taking. Or that's not the case. And so it's a really tough one to deal with, but
Can I make one clarification? After Mac's email, we did some additional calculation. The 001181 actually is our budgeted number, and it's a 2% published increase. The rate that would be a published 10% increase is 0.01277. That projects the remaining 1,070,000.
say that number
Wait,
again.
what?
001273.
Raising what?
That would have been max number 6.
Okay, so not the 1181.
The 1181 takes us right to $1 million.
So the 1273, we would publish a 10% increase. It would be a 16% decrease from last year's rate to what? we would go to.
But the revenue now would still be the 178.
Yeah,
That's the 111.
no.
1273,
Right, but 1273 brings us in $1,078.
$1,078,000.
Right. And then number 6 on Matt's email is the 001181, which is also the same. That's our
That
number.
brings in exactly 1 million. What
That's what, if they were saying that was an error in
Okay,
calculation.
that's very good. All right.
I can assume that's what Larry said, we decided to hold the rate in previous city council meetings. We did it for years, so basically we were getting the same amount of money, which meant we were getting less money. And they always have to change the rate number to or equivalent amount. So that doesn't account for any inflation. So that's why we said we were gonna hold the rate going forward, so when inflation went up, we would still be able to pay for all the services we need. We need another 100% increase. So to me, that's the reason why we need the rate. But as I mentioned, with the housing prices ridiculous, it doesn't make sense. My mind either, however, I agree with what we originally planned and budgeted for. We can go to what the state was recommending, because then we're losing money, we'll get back to that same old thing we were before, where we are now getting behind every single year. But I think we need to communicate and educate well to our residents what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because next year, if the housing market drops, then maintaining the rate is not going to give us what we need for the behind here.
But that's when we adopt the certified tax rate account.
Right.
Just for clarification, one thing to consider is what you adopt tonight is proposed, is what you'll have in truth and taxation and for the public hearing. What you adopt for the final tax rate does not necessarily have to be what was proposed at the hearing. You still have the option to change after that point.
And the whole idea is to put something out to the public saying we're considering this and receive public feedback and make the decision in August.
If you were high, you decided after the public hearing, that it was, you can come up with something lower, you can lower that. First would be higher, might be a little bit tougher to do, publish one and then take it back up. That's my personal opinion, but whatever you publish, you make that final decision after the hearing as to what you want to be the final one. That will come back as a resolution passed by the council before the end of September.
One other thing to know, we've talked about housing market and we've talked about inflation. Property taxes are only based on the housing market, only based on the changes to property value. So it's not a true kind of index or CPI, something like that. So if we're talking about capturing inflation, which I hear that a few council members saying is mostly the goal, then in traditional year, holding the rate does that. But every year you got to look at it, and this year, each of your point, holding the rate captures the housing market change, but inflation is a different percentage, and I think that's what it sounds
I just wanted to, I just have a clarifying question on that. Just seeing where people are sitting, which rate are we talking that you, I don't know.
Oh,
1.81, where?
I was leaning towards 1273.
1273, okay. Is that you, Andy?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right, I just wanted to know.
I'm also leaning towards the 1.3 because I think that the budget that we're looking at and working with right now really has to take in the serious issue of inflation, not just what it is today, because I see the inflation in some areas, the value of homes might be dropping, but the inflation is still going on. It kind of puts us into a position that we won't be able to provide the services that we promised the citizens we would. When we look at everything from the snow plows to being able to just run our own trucks and doing everything else, it's going to be huge. It's going to be double what we've allocated so far. So I just want to say that if we do the 1273, I think we do need to make sure that we look at the amount of inflation that we're actually expecting and how it would impact directly the city, not necessarily. Because I know inflation takes in everything from fuel to food costs to housing costs. Housing and food doesn't really affect how the city does its business, but fuel costs, energy costs, those things too. So I definitely lean more towards 1273. But I've got to admit, I would just love fuel and cut taxes. That would be like
You will be doing that.
that's how this is.
In reality, you're cutting 16%. And we're still going to get told the rate.
They have a data to our fuel expenses in each of our lines. How much do we bill out in each of those areas that have fuel expense?
Was it 50%?
Fuel, whatever it was, 50%.
Yeah, I can hear it.
78,000.
Yeah.
100%.
That's, yeah, it's, right now, the average price across the US is $5. That's the highest we've ever.
That's almost 12%.
Yeah.
I know.
That's where I'm going.
Well, to your point, Joel, and I don't mean to take over the conversation, this is your conversation, but, you know, to that point, a lot of the concept between holding the rate is to make sure that you are providing the level of service that you're currently providing and not losing that over time by having your rate increase. So, it's an interesting dilemma where holding the rate philosophically captures all of that and maintains the level of service, whereas because the market has shifted so dramatically, makes that number published so large.
I just want to clarify real quickly. So the only problem with the truth in taxation is the timing. It doesn't change the cost or anything like that.
Yeah, I, the 1273, I feel comfortable with, I think at least that's my thoughts as well.
Okay, so do we want to adopt that?
So right now,
We need to define it.
we're just denying it, correct? We're just denying the resolution 2376.
You
can amend it.
You can adopt it with amending the rate to be 127.
And as you adopt it, we need to have you set on the slide as the rate. That is officially part of the resolution. We do not, as we set the goals, right, which is the resolution, also set that rate officially. We've chosen that date, but the council needs to actually set
Mayor, I move that we amend resolution 22-26 about proposed certified tax rate with the change of the tax rate to be 0.001273 with the date of August 9th for our truth in taxation.
Roll call vote. Councilman Allison? Okay, our next item was 22-27.
So the other option would be late dispatch. We have talked with them. It would be more expensive method for them. We also talked with our public safety staff, which you comment. Since we moved to Lane City, if all of our services were provided by Lane City, so if the dispatch and law enforcement were there, knowing that conversations are retained with Davis County at this point, those contract negotiations, at least for one more year. As to what you said, it makes no sense to stay with DCSO. Law enforcement contract is there as well.
This is a motion. Oh, sorry. Okay. As the county moves towards a consolidated dispatch centers, as the discussion has been that they're consolidating all of them, do we have any idea if our contract with them will be similar, comparable to what this is in the future?
I don't know that at this stage. Right now, there's a lot of work to have a consolidated dispatch with technology, but there have been conversations about physical consolidation, getting to the point of potential, I'll just conceptual at this point, but potential physical consolidation and that, which would be different than each individual contract. And so that is a concept that we discussed. The county actually has space available to count on a physical location and centralized dispatch. So that's all up in the air, yet to be determined, that that concept our role in that.
Thank you.
Motion?
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 22-27, the interlocal cooperative agreement with Davis County for dispatch services.
Give me a second, roll call vote, then starting with Bill.
Aye.
Unanimous. Motion carries, thank you. Next, resolution 22-28, declare all vehicle surplus. Discussion on that, or?
I just had a question on, clearing the auction. We again, the market that we're in, it's that, if we go through the auction process, are we looking at receiving about the same amount as if we were to try? So.
Yeah, my experience in surplus vehicles is you do get the best price for the auction. Yeah, there is a chance if you try to sell it yourself and you have a public process, right? You obviously have to give everybody a chance if you're trying to sell it ourselves or go on PSL or whatnot. But there's just a lot of staff time that goes into that. So I've always seen that the public auction process is the simplest, most straightforward.
Do you have a question on that? They answered my question. Any other questions?
Sorry, I have one question real quick. So, can you just remind me, staff, what our parameters are for vehicle replacement? Are we replacing all of these because we're doing our new lease program?
Yep. These are all replaced because the lease vehicles are down here and we're ready to do our first round.
Thank you.
A motion? And I'll move that we approve resolution 22-28, declare vehicle surplus. Roll call. Resolution 22-28.
I appreciate the discussion that was put into this and making to this agreement for the same on the city money. And it makes sense that we're all moving each other in, so. That's my comment, I appreciate it. I think it's very good.
The only thing I have to say is that I'm very surprised that our rate is that much.
So we're well. That's why our budget is not, our budgets and actuals are on.
Well, I know that by looking at other city codes on there, see where they actually put it in code. Other things, but at the same time, collecting is something more out that some of it has to be expected, but I'm just really surprised that it's still not another thing.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution 22-21-48, interlocal paramedic billing agreement.
Second.
Number 10, fraud risk assessment.
No comment, I have no comment.
those things. We can, and every year I sat here, that number's gotten lower and lower.
We do need an action, it's not a resolution, it's to accept.
I'll make a motion to approve the progress.
Second.
All in favor? Step 2022 draft water conservation plan. Any questions or discussions on this item? Just a summary clarification, this is something we submit to the state. It's evolves and changes as things occur here. So from my standpoint, the plan looks good and conservative.
We've had a plan in the past. This is an update to the plan. The state requirements have adjusted as far as the process for adopting the plan. So that's why it's coming forward in draft form for the council to accept. We then will submit it to the state. They'll provide any comments before a final adoption of the plan before July. Or before the end of July. Did I say that? Just add one more clarification. The draft is due by the end of July. And they will review it. Yes. They will review it. Any comments that they have back to us will come back to us. We would incorporate those or address those. And then they want it officially adopted.
Just one follow-up question on the meter enforcement plan. Is that a 10-year cycle expected by the state, or is it something because we're replacing all the code in our meters in a 10-year period? Is that going to start over again? Is it finished 2023? Or is there any limitation as to how often that's?
I can find that out. That's more Brian's wheelhouse than mine, but I know that we have had old meters and we're going through and getting them all up to par here. The question of how quickly we get the process over, I'm not sure that's a good question.
These are all still walk around visually check meters, correct?
The new ones are not.
No, the new ones are reporting through the GIS or the radio system.
The goal, yeah, that's a great thing to highlight. The goal is to be able to have remote reading so that at any point, any moment, you could have live readings of what's going on. It's a great protection. So if we see something on our side, there's notification to residents that there's leaks and whatnot. The process of having somebody go around every month and get out of the vehicle and read the meters and bring that back to the office, we're moving away from that. We've made really good progress, and within the next couple of years, I think we'll have it so that it's all remote. We can work with our SCADA system and whatnot, so we have made some important steps in the last few years to exactly what you described.
Currently, all meters are read remotely by a truck and with a computer in it. The only time we actually do a physical reading is if we get a bad read automatically through the computer and the transmitting of those readings back to the truck. Then if we see a high read, then it will go out and physically reread the meter. The life expectancy of the meters is really based more on the life of the batteries. Originally, when these were starting to change over, battery life was like 3 years. We had to go out a lot more often to replace the batteries. That's really the major thing which changed on the batteries. Occasionally, we have all the transport. The physical meter can get it actually changed out.
May I make a motion to approve and accept the 2022 draft water conservation plan?
All in favor, say aye.
Can I just ask if you can come up to the website under our water conservation? If I also allow this, I think it would you want the residents to see it. Thank you.
Do you want the last one or do you want that one?
No, on the side. Thank you.
Any other discussion items, number 12, noise ordinance? Discussion on that.
I appreciate us putting in the court ordinance. I know it came from first one I've seen. Learned a lot from it. My biggest question, concern is, are we ready to be a big city enforcer? There's so many different things that are spelled out. The time there's a report, it has to go through a big, long list of, at least 3 feet off the ground, or at least this location, or the measure noise. I understand why it's all there. My biggest question is, are we going to enforce it? Or are we going to have details that it's difficult to enforce, or try to. It comes back and says, oh, you didn't calibrate it. Oh, you didn't do this and that. I see the reason why most of the things are in there. That's just my biggest concern overall, is jumping from nothing to a very detailed noise ordinance that, I mean, we're not enforcing a lot of things right now as a city, unfortunately. Is this just going to add to that? I know it gives us something to at least address the concern if we have one. And so we do need something. That's just my biggest concern, is are we biting off more than we can chew? So to that, I can answer. Last week, I asked if we could have a noise check done over by the new car wash. This was specifically so that we would know, as we're looking at a few of the items in the Planning Commission. I received information back from Chris real quickly. He was able to give the readings that we were getting there on site. It didn't seem like a burden to him. He said it was pretty easy and it was quickly taken care of that day. So I don't know how many of the conditions that are put inside the document itself change that. I think it was pretty much a simple, once you've got it set up, here's where you're at, and then take a meter read. So, but that was just the impression that I got from him, if that helps you, Quinn. Okay. Yep.
Out of curiosity, Joel, how did that reading go?
He said that it didn't violate at all, and that was checking within the boundaries and then looking at the property line right there where we were looking at residential coming in. So accordingly, that would put industrial, commercial at 65. So 65 decibels right now.
Good.
Is that what we had in the CUP for that?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, we had established what the ambient noise level was. Chris had gone out there prior to any construction and established those levels with 89 and with the school and with Maverick and all of that. And so, yeah, and the CUP was very specific as far as how far off of those ambient levels they could get.
And I do think that's where we start getting muddled, is as we have to look at all of the other calculations to throw into it, the ambient noise that's already there. I'd liked a much simpler approach where if the noise travels over the property line, the sound cannot exceed a certain level. And as we look at on page 131, where it actually allows the maximum allowable sound levels, my question is, it looks like this is taking just the level at the commercial property, let's say. So if you're on the commercial property and you measure it, it can't go over 65. And yet 6 inches from that is the border of a residential area where it can't go over 55. And so
since the source of the sound is on the commercial, I think it should still have to follow the guidelines of if that sound is going over and affecting residential at a higher level than it's allowed, then it still should be under violation.
Well, the problem with, and I get what you're saying. The problem is like, let's take that, for example. We were measuring standing right by the property before the car wash ever went in the 70s. And before, and so how do you regulate that? Where does that gray line get drawn? And I kind of get Quinn's comment. I think we do need some guidelines because we struggled when this was faced with Morty's. And we had no guidelines to go with. I think we need something, but I think we start creating, if we're going to say that commercial property can't go over onto that residential property, then we probably shouldn't have let that commercial property go there next to it to begin with.
I agree. It shouldn't have gone there.
Well, I don't agree, but the noise was already louder than that now before it ever went there. So
I actually, I have concerns. I have some concerns about the residential, only because I've gotten a couple of comments from residents that are nervous that an angry neighbor is going to be, for example, one may have a pool close to the property line. If those kids are out playing in the pool, it's going to be over the 55. I actually measured at my house in the morning, just ambient, no noise. I was at 60. I have a bird I named Floyd that's really loud. But so I'm wondering if we're almost too low, that, to Quinn's point, we want to protect the residential areas, but are we opening up a can of worms where every neighbor is like, see, it's over 55? Is it too low? Maybe is the question I'm asking. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, at this time, though, you can call the police and do a disturbing the peace, which doesn't have a decibel level. And the neighbor can do that at any time. And we do have nuisance, and I don't know if Jamie can chime in on nuisance level with dogs and whatever the other types of animals, but
Dogs go through animal control, but the nuisance, if we have the residential in this code, then that's what we would adhere to versus the whatever you just said. When you call somebody's having a party and it's too loud, what'd you just call that?
disturbing the peace.
Thank you. God, disturbing the peace. Sorry.
So what is it for residential? It's 55?
It's 55, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 50, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So Floyd is too loud at all times in my neighborhood.
So Angie's over here proving a point. So while I'm talking right now, we're in the mid 70s. While you were talking, it was in the mid 70s. It would drop down to 60s. When it was quiet, we're just below 60.
Yeah.
That's pretty tough to maintain. And I think you're right. I think there's a very hard.
So when we
thing.
came
How
up
do you-
with these numbers, we actually did the same thing. We just put one in the middle of the room. And I think that's when I realized that maybe we were off, is when you measure an interior room versus going outside, it's very different. Because
Very
when
different.
we were, I think anytime Dave spoke, it went to like 85, but otherwise it sat at like 70. But once I translated that to outside in a backyard, it was much higher with just the regular ambient
Oh,
noise.
it was.
hmm
Wow.
And Floyd, he's really loud. But so that's my only concern is in terms of like other cities and their residential, was this something that I can't even remember if we compared it with other cities and their residential? This is where it fits with them as well.
This is a very standard template basically from the state, right? So all of these can be modified based upon the city, because we do have a different ambient noise level than Hooper would have, right? So so we could definitely adjust those.
So I have similar concern, if we just adopt numbers without going out and verifying them, then we've opened up and now people can just nitpick any neighbors they want. I guess just one other question on the document itself. We have on page, where is it? There's short-term rental. page 133. We have a section J, K, and then we go back to a new section J again. Short-term rentals as a restriction. What was the purpose for putting that in there? Are we just simply saying somebody comes in with short-term rental, they still have to abide by all the law? I mean,
Yeah,
why do we have to spell that out?
in the short-term rental, there's provisions for noise as well. So it's just a referencing, making sure that there's a connection between
So
the two sections.
It's more just making sure that there's double.
Closing the loop, basically, so
Okay.
that
So if somebody is looking at a short-term rental and looking in that code, they could see the noise. But if somebody's looking at the noise ordinance, we wanted to make sure that they knew the short-term rental noise restriction. So by putting it in here, somebody would see it in the noise ordinance and be able to refer to that.
I do want to point out the table that's provided is if you cannot establish a background noise level. So if you read in section A in that portion, no person shall cause, suffer, allow to, or permit the operation of any sound source in such a manner to create a sound level that exceeds the background sound level by 10 decibels during daytime hours and 5 decibels during nighttime hours. So it would be responsible for us to measure what the sound level is, the current background sound level is. So if it is at 70 already based on ambient noise, then they couldn't go 10 decibels above that 70. Otherwise, if we can't establish a background noise, then we would use the table that's below. Just for reference there.
I just had another question regarding the number 3 under C number 3 for the public park. Just in terms of the events that the city holds at the park, both for Country Fair Days and for youth city council events that we've done. And the permit that would be required for that. Is that something that we put in because other cities had that, or is that a complaint that we have gotten, or what's the purpose of that?
The provision for public, again, this is a pretty standard template. So we haven't necessarily got any complaints that spurred that. It was just part of the template document that we used for this. With the permitting, basically we permit them to allow for them to go past the limits, right? So it's similar to like any permit to go outside of the normal bounds of the law. It allows us to give that option there.
So just talking, because we talked about teeth in terms of this, what happens if they don't get a permit?
We would cite them with a nuisance violation.
Okay. Angie, that you're taking the bait for that one. Okay.
Sure, okay. I did have a question though. On page, it's on page 136 of the packet. Talked about engine brakes. And Trevor, I liked how you said that. I thought that was great.
Thank you.
But it does say employ the use of said brake if they shall not be permitted to employ the use of said brakes except in emergency situations. I feel like everyone could potentially interpret that differently. I think it's a pretty general statement, but I think someone could say, no, it was an emergency, I had to use it. So is there any other way that we could, is that really our best way to say that? I can't think, I've thought of how to change it and I can't think of any other way. I just want to know if anyone else has.
Jamie, this is why we pay you the big bucks.
I think Angie's found an effective loophole.
I don't want a loophole.
Yeah, so I think engine brakes is a tough one. I think you either disallow them or have to allow them. And then I would say on engine brakes is just a practical matter.
the roads in South Weaver where you see those kinds of vehicles, for the most part, are state or federal highways. And
Yeah.
so you're limited a little bit in what you can enforce just from a practical standpoint.
So you're still gonna hear them coming down 89, Angie,
Breaking my heart, guys.
and South Weaver Drive for that
It
matter.
would
Yeah.
be nice to put a sign up.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of cities just say they're forbidden in
I think
residential
what you could
neighborhoods,
do with that a
period.
lot. Yeah,
But our main roads are not city roads.
Yeah.
But we could,
I like that
Notice.
approach
We
of
could put a
outlining
sign
them in
up.
residential
Did we
areas.
decide we could put a sign up that says prohibited? Might not be able to enforce it, but you can put it up. They don't. Layton City's
That's what
got
I
one
was
right,
gonna say.
yeah.
just as you go
Yeah.
up 193 right here, or to 193, the Layton City's got one right there.
So,
And that's what it says.
Yeah, I
Layton
have
City
no
prohibited.
concern with that.
Yeah.
Just please be aware that it is practically unenforceable.
Yeah.
so perhaps our benefit to the benefit here is that they may not know that. So if, who would enforce that? Would that be
We could have
the
Davis County.
cops? The,
Yeah,
Sure.
you'd have
thank
to.
you. I'm sorry. They pull them over as long as they don't know, hey, as long as you tell me it was an emergency, I won't fight you, but if they don't know that, then maybe it'll help. But I think a sign would help and would be,
So if we just prohibit the use of them altogether, I would feel better about that.
okay. I'm okay. I'm good with that.
And this is a discussion item, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
any comments or suggestions would be incorporated into a proposed ordinance that would come back for action.
So for note to whomever is taking notes, Dave or Trevor, page 130, so I don't know what that page is on here, but page 136, right underneath the table where it says section B, motor vehicles equipped with engine brakes are not permitted, or engine brakes are not permitted, or something like
Use of
that.
engine brake.
Yeah, we can let them drive their vehicles. Right.
So there's a lot of XXX and TBDs, like the enforcement references a Title I, Chapter 4 of this code. Is that really of our code, or is that just a copy paste out of whichever cities it came from?
They were left as, the non-numbers until we
Okay.
put in our own city code numbers.
Yep. Lisa's working on getting the numbers and she came to me and said, we need to fix all the numbers. So that will be done when the final comes. We just wanted to do draft form so that we don't have to number it and then renumber it and then renumber it. We can just get the numbers all right the first time.
Except for that J.
Except for that J. I don't know what I was thinking. JKJ sounds really cool. Wow.
Quinn, you asked a
I have-
question right at the beginning about why all of the detail in how you take these measurements. And the answer is not a simple one. It's just that noise ordinances develop over time, and as they're tested in the courts, they're tweaked and modified to where they can kind of thread the needle and be defensible. And so all of the measurement aspects of this ordinance are those things that have held up in court, which does mean it's difficult to enforce, right? You have to take those measurements and be really precise in how you do it, much like DUI laws and how you administer the different tests to determine whether somebody's inebriated or tested and tried over and over.
Yeah, we hope that the conscientious citizens will say, oh, yeah, sorry, I'll comply. But the people that are going to push against it, we may not. And that's my concern again, as far as I agree with it and I support it. The enforcement aspect of it, if we're only having somebody go out and do this every 2-3 months, and we have 15 things that they must do, because our document says it shall be per boom, 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 realize that we probably aren't going to win if anybody fights against it. If we've got 15 things they have to do and they're only doing it once every blue moon.
Well, but again, I think this, at least my understanding of this ordinance is that this is more of a a compliance issue and a code enforcement between an actual source of noise. Because like I said, whether it's chickens or kids screaming at a pool party, all of that is just handled through Davis County immediately, giving them a call, and they'll come out and they'll work with them. And, you know, usually things will settle down. If there's a party out there, same kind of thing. The police are going to be involved. If it's a, let's say the car wash, one of the vacuums breaks and suddenly the muffler's not working on it, and that is extremely loud. That's when code enforcement, that's when compliance would have to be go out, check, measure it, and then that whole process could start. I really don't see this as neighbor versus neighbor, because that's not a code enforcement issue, that's a Davis County. And so to me, as long as it gives the protections of the homeowners that are going to be right there impacted, whether it's by commercial, industrial, or any of those areas, I think that's where it really needs to focus its attention on. But that's just me.
So just a question, let's say you do have a commercial backed up against a residential that they're going over that 65. What is they're fined, but is it just up to them to figure out how to mitigate their own noise?
Yeah, at that point, it's a nuisance violation, so we would go and we have the ability to try to abate the nuisance and stop that, and then they would need to make adjustments to fix that noise. If they can't do it, then they risk being fined again for the same violation.
Yeah. So I think this is really good. I was surprised a long time ago to find out we didn't have a quiet time during the, when construction could start. That was really surprising to me, and I think it's a good thing to give Brandon for a pre-construction meeting now contractors we've never been able to tell a contractor they can't start before 7 a.m. in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I can guarantee you, I've had my neighbors complaining with all the construction going on down there that people are starting at 5:30 and 6 a.m. The beeps and everything. So this actually helps with that drastically. And that's one of my favorite parts about it. But I do think table 2 needs to be reviewed and just decide. I know we just, if you can establish it, but the first thing everybody's going to do is go look at that table. And maybe we just come up with a little bit. I think residential at 55 and 50 is pretty low, especially considering our ambient noise is probably above that. Some nights it's not, but
right.
most nights it is. And so maybe we just tweak it a little bit, but I think it's a really good start.
Yeah. Just a question of how it would work with protocol. If commercial is abutting residential, commercial is 70 at their property line, and the residential is at 70 at their property line. Which one do you go, are they double dinged for going over residential and theirs, or how does that work?
No, so we look at it for the sound, the source of the sound, and then that sound traveling across their property line, that's who would get the citation. So if the residential is going into the commercial, then the residential would, so if they have the sound originating there, say they have Floyd. Okay. Floyd in their yard, and he's at 80 decibels and going into the commercial. They could
get rid of Floyd.
They could say, hey, there's a problem, right? But most likely not. But yeah, so it's the originating sound to the property line is where the measurement will take place. And typically with the background noise, we would take the measurement of the noise that's happening, and then when we would come back to a place that the noise isn't happening to establish a background noise estimate potentially, right?
Okay.
So because we couldn't at the time of nuisance notification, we can't get a background noise at that point. We would have to come and try to establish a background noise.
Okay. Thank you.
And I actually don't think he would qualify, because I remember somewhere in here saying that the source has to be non-mobile. So it has to be a stationary source. It can't be flying, moving. It can't be like a motorcycle or any of those kind of things.
Could it be a whistle?
Yes. Mhm.
That's what I was
Okay,
wondering
still
about.
silent?
Okay, staff, want to move forward with that then? Anything else?
Just to clarify, do you want me to do more research on the table and adjust it up?
I think so.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Mhm.
Is let's look at maybe we can identify what our ambient sound is already and adjust.
Thank you.
Okay, our next discussion item is city council meeting schedule. We've had a few meetings that have gone quite long, and so
Quite
want to
long.
discuss.
Record.
It's normal to me.
It has been normal to you.
I just figure that's the way it works. So anyway, what do you think? Do we want to add more meetings, or do we want to set some parameters on what we do for the 2 meetings a month that we have?
Well, I personally block out that on my schedule every week anyway. So I would personally rather leave that up to staff and the mayor's discretion. If our agendas look like they're going to be long, you automatically add the 3rd meeting. And that was the discussion when we went from 3 to 2, is that we would add the 3rd meeting back as needed. But that was a different mayor. I get that, and that's kind of your meeting, but I would prefer not to be here till midnight, but that's okay.
Angie, what do you think?
I'm with Blair. I always block out my Tuesdays just in case. I don't plan anything. I would love to get it done in 2, but if there's things the city needs us to be moving forward on, I don't see any reason to hold it off another week to stick to 2 meetings a month. So I'm open to a 3rd meeting.
Glenn?
I feel the same. I'd like to try to do it in 2, but if we have heavy things to discuss, then plan for 3. I'm the same way. My Tuesdays are pretty much, although when I do plan vacations, I plan them on one between. So I join virtually and I still can do that. But yeah.
Yeah, same. Just I feel like we are a little more efficient if we're not going for 6 hours. So if it's looking like a long meeting, then definitely add it. I know that there's sometimes that we want to discuss things, but the agenda's already full. So it'd be nice to be able to not feel, that we have to put things off too long to be able to discuss it. If we can just add a meeting.
Yeah, I think that would be a very good idea, because if just a couple of times that I've been here, I've seen where we've had to move items either off of this agenda onto the next one. We've had to bump certain things that were on it. But quite honestly, I'm just happy you guys aren't limiting the amount of time that I can talk. So
Not yet.
2 minutes. Sorry, Joel, you're done.
Number of meetings is tied to efficiency within meetings, so.
There is some correlation.
We give you the first year, but after that, I have a little counter.
A little hourglass.
Well, I feel like we should try to hold it to 2 if we can. But if we see that there's going to be a need for a 3rd, then Dave and I will work that out.
Do you know if we have a backlog right now of items that could, do you know if we have a backlog of items right now that we're kind of holding off because we can't fit them in, or?
No, not
could we get more quickly?
necessarily. There's lots of work that goes into what ends up on a city council agenda. And so as staff, we meet weekly to talk about future agendas and what's coming and making sure that we're ready to go, and that we've got all of the materials prepared, and we've thought through it and researched it the right way, as much as we can to get it prepared for you. So there's quite a bit that goes into that. Our schedule is that all the materials are required 2 weeks before the meeting, so that we can then put together a draft packet and do some quality assurance and quality check amongst ourselves to look at it and see before it is finalized for the actual council agenda. By putting a 3rd meeting in there, that does create additional workload, but the timing of that is such that it condenses things. And I found personally that when I'm working on a on an agenda 2 weeks in advance. We're trying to get everything ready. Obviously, the meeting on that day takes precedence. And so when questions and things come, we want to prepare for that day. And just from a workload and a balance standpoint, we've had discussions of staff where we appreciate having just the 2 meetings. But we do meet and talk about that and talk through what's coming. And we're usually looking about 6 weeks ahead for the most part. 2 to 3 meetings ahead is what we have talked about. And then there are items, of course, that are worked on that are longer term items that don't necessarily have a target date. But at any given point, we could tell you what's kind of on a draft agenda for the next 6 weeks or so, 2 or 3 meetings.
My question to this would just be, if we decide to add another meeting, how far in advance would we notice that for the council's sake, not just the public, but for the council? Because just like Quinn, planning vacations and stuff, I try to plan it on the off week.
Right. My personal feeling is that we can get it done in 2 most of the time. We had some unique circumstances at the beginning of this year and this kind of first quarter, second quarter that really kind of created a condensed backlog of items that just were urgent and needed to be talked about. But typically, I think we can fit it within 2. We can do a better job, or at least I can do a better job of trying to anticipate, big items and small items and just try to balance those out so that not all the big items hit on the same night. Trying to determine what will have a lot of discussion is a crystal ball, and I'm still pretty bad at that, to tell you the truth. But I think the mayor and I can work through that. As far as notice, I think we want to give as much notice as possible and not just have it be kind of a emergency meeting. I think that we would want to give, a normal packet time to get out and let everybody view that. So when we say a 3rd meeting, is that always on the 3rd Tuesday? We had talked previously about meeting on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. When we went to 2, we went 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. When you say the 3rd meeting, is there an assumption that would only be on that 3rd meeting, that 3rd week of the month? Or are you saying the 1st week is an option too, just as needed, and determining when is needed is the question?
To me, it seems like depending upon what the critical timing is, like the truth and taxation and all these other things, we have deadlines. And so if that means we do it the 1st week of the month, I would rather do that than to cram everything into the 2nd, because we have to have it in 2 days. But I don't know. That's just my thought there.
I'm okay on either one.
Yeah, I agree. Quinn.
So it's a lot of head nods for either week.
Either
just
week's fine.
As
if we
needed.
needed.
Yep.
As needed.
Tuesdays are kept open as needed for city council business. Okay.
And then talking that specific example, we have truth and taxation now scheduled for our regular city council. Like in past truth and taxations, we've had kind of an open house type atmosphere. Is that not going to be?
So the truth
conflicting
and
with city
taxation
council?
hearing is not a city council business meeting. It's a different format. And so
So that
we
night
have the
wouldn't
option
have
in
normal
August,
city council.
right? If we want to hold business items in August and there's more than just what could be done on the 23rd, the 4th Tuesday, then we would probably need to add another meeting in August. And we'll know as we get closer whether or not there's enough business items to necessitate another meeting. But
So the
right
plan
now,
at
it
this
would
point
be,
is we'd have this truth and taxation only on the 9th and then a city council on the 23rd.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. New business.
Mm.
To reports.
I have an item of new business, just a discussion, and I'm sure Councilman Dills has the same one. We had some residents reach out to us about potentially increasing our park summer hours because it doesn't get dark until 10 o'clock. So we wanted to have the discussion, how people feel about it. They're specifically talking about pickleball and how it can go till midnight easily at other places. Now, I don't know if those places are near residential or the location of those, our pickleball courts are right in the middle of a residential area, so I don't think midnight's appropriate. And I want to make sure we're addressing everyone's concerns, all the residents.
What do
are
our hours go to now?
10 o'clock right now.
I would be a no.
For all park, are they wanting all parks or is there a specific park?
Well, this is just people asking about pickleball, saying that it's always pretty late. So I'm open for the discussion. I don't want to inconvenience our residents,
For sure.
but I'm happy to hear what people have to say.
I personally think 10 o'clock is more than acceptable.
I would agree. I just have a question on noise ordinance. How does that work?
I totally looked this up.
What is that? I didn't even think about it.
Okay, pickleball is 70
70?
decibels. And so if you look at our table there, public is 70 after 10 o'clock.
Okay, so it would
75 from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then it goes down to
70, so it
70.
would still be within our noise ordinance. That might be too
Technically.
loud, huh? Yeah, I agree. I think if the pickleball is bothering the residents in that area, I don't see increasing it later.
What are the current hours posted?
It's until
Park
it's
hours until 10.
10,
What time?
6 a.m. to 10.
And I pretty much concur is that, let's start it off at 10, and if there's a huge demand of people that are waiting at 11 o'clock, we could reconsider it, but I think that going to 10 is more than enough right now. We are quite close to some homes, and again, going back to noise ordinance, I don't care how loud they are where they're playing. I'm more worried about how loud they are when it crosses over to one of those neighbors' yards. So to me, I think that we keep it at 10 right now, and maybe we can address it later on if we see a need for it, or if we see that it's actually quite a bit quieter, maybe not as much loud yelling, grunting. I didn't know pickleball did that, so.
Just when I
but-
play.
Just when you play.
Okay, Brandon Jones,
Yes.
just a quick question. Do you remember how close we were when we measured that out of how close the pickleball courts were to the residences? The closest one was like 75 feet,
Probably 70 feet to Ron's house.
right? Does this sound, I know I'm totally
To
putting you on the
the,
spot.
from
To
the
the-
pickleball courts to.
to the property line?
Oh, boy.
But just to the property line, and we didn't even go all the way to the house. We were just saying to the
No,
property
I
line.
think we were measuring to homes.
Were we? Okay.
Yes.
That would be more like 100.
But I
feet
do
then.
not remember. I mean, it was over. Well, I don't.
It was
dare
a long time ago.
give
I
a
know.
number.
I'm putting you on the
Yeah,
spot.
just
Okay.
off the top of my head, I don't remember, but we did try, I guess for the record, we were trying to locate it in a location that was the farthest away from homes.
Yes.
Do we have plans for trees to go in there eventually, or is it kind of open in that area? Do you recall?
That depends on what happens with the rest of the park.
Okay.
To
Yes, we
be
love more
determined.
trees.
I'd love more trees. in South Park.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm happy to report to the residents that we had this discussion, but it's at this point, we're still considering just 10 o'clock and then,
Perhaps just even looking into a way to mitigate the sound in the future.
right?
You know, if we can make it so it doesn't bother neighbors in the future,
Mhm.
then I think that's appropriate. But as long as it's bothering neighbors, then no.
Because 70 is loud.
It is loud.
It really is loud. So if that's at 11 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
that can be loud.
Mhm.
That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other new business?
Yeah, I've got a couple more. First of all, just wanted to, Dave, do we want to go on and announce all the dates for the pickleball right now, or?
Yeah, that was something that I had to report. So let's talk through that. That's a good segue. There's a final walkthrough scheduled for Thursday this week to confirm that all of the punch list items are complete. If all goes well, then we will be able to remove the fence on Saturday or Friday, June 17th. So the park could be open for use as early as this Friday. We anticipate that being the case. We are currently planning and anticipating holding kind of a grand opening ceremony, so to speak, on July 2nd, Saturday, July 2nd. We try to do that as early in the morning as we can so that it doesn't get too blazing hot that day. But what we're looking at is having a pickleball open house or clinic for about an hour and a half for players that are kind of intermediate. They've maybe played a handful of times, but still would like some instruction. We have members of the community that are already organizing themselves to coach and be available that morning. So from 7:30 to 9, we'd have kind of intermediate players come and have some coaching. We could then do the ribbon cutting ceremony at 9 o'clock on Saturday the 2nd. And then we'd have beginners clinic at 9:30. So the ribbon cutting ceremony would be between the two clinics, hopefully get people there and be able to participate and recognize donors, recognize all the hard work that's gone into that, take some pictures, do the ceremony, cut the ribbon. And then we're also planning to host through the recreation department pickleball tournament the following Saturday on July 9th. We would do that in the evening. And that would give people a chance to come to the clinic, maybe learn, and still have the registration window open if they wanted to register for the tournament after getting a little bit of coaching and a sense for how awesome pickleball can be.
So is the park going to be open before that though?
Yes, the park will be
Just for
usable.
Public information.
Yes,
That's
park will be
clarified.
usable hopefully this Friday, the 17th.
Is there a prize for those who take first place in the tournament?
Yes, there will be.
What is it?
Glory.
It doesn't
honor,
matter,
and
you're not
fame.
winning, Haley.
I might if it's good enough prize. Okay, thank you.
I won't
So-
be here on the second. I'll be back over. Too close to the fourth and I've got a family. So I won't.
Is there another day you would prefer to host that then?
No, I don't want to hold it up.
Well, I'm sure we can get a bunch of the council out to open it up and maybe participate in a clinic.
Blair will be there.
I'll be there. We can have Joe do it.
We'll create a cardboard cutout of you, Mayor.
Can you make it mechanical? He can wave. Maybe even
Waving.
with a pickleball.
Yeah, we paddle on it.
Oh, and
You're
people
ready.
could hit a ball at him and if it
Like a
hits
dress-up
the
doll.
paddle,
A life-size dress-up doll.
circus game.
Mhm.
It is pretty exciting to have such a substantial new city park amenity, right? The basketball court looks great. If you haven't had a chance, council members, to go over and look at that. The bike track is still in progress, so that's not going to be usable at the opening, but
Do we know when that will be ready?
no, there's not a date yet.
My
We're
son is
still-
very excited about it.
Yeah, we're working with, there's an incredible group of volunteers that have been spearheading that and working with the Parks Committee, specifically Angie before she left the Parks Committee, but there's been a great group that's been working on that. A little bit slow going, but we are trying to expedite that as much as we can because having everything else usable will make it so people will want to use that too.
So just a clarification then on the bike path, if it's not ready, is it going to be fenced off or people going to?
We'll try to make that clear. Yeah, we'll try to make that clear.
Okay.
And then the other part is that we are looking at and trying to figure out some solutions for the train club to make it a successful venture for them and also to make it work for the city. So we're looking at some different options, some different things that we can maybe try contract-wise and some different things we can do to help them along. And it sounds like they are very willing and excited to be able to participate in this. So just kind of giving you a heads up, we are kind of working on that right now. And that's it.
One thing that I should add about the day-long celebration, maybe not day-long, morning celebration, we are looking at potentially bringing a food truck in so that a food truck could be there at the park for those that aren't necessarily coming to play pickleball or basketball. They could still come and be part of the excitement and fun of opening a new park amenity. So we're looking at options there, but we hope to make that a little bit more universal than just for pickleball players and basketball players.
Okay, great. Okay, one item that I think we want to discuss, we just brought up, is discuss a little bit on our tentative budget that we've got coming up, in particular with the compensation to city council and mayor. Want, feedback on that. So if you've got an item. To that, we're open for suggestions there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as I've mentioned to many of you and others have been able to watch, we've had some good discussions out there about it, and some not so good discussions. But I do think that regardless of the amount, regardless of the feeling with the storm drain, all of these kind of things, I think it just comes down to very clearly, everyone that I've talked to has requested that we do not raise the compensation for the city council, mayor, or planning commission. So I would like to see, and of course this depends on everyone, but that is something that I'm going to put into the tentative budget as we move it over to the actual budget, is to remove the $200 or the compensation for each member. So I just thought y'all should know that. I've gotten quite a bit of feedback. Some people have been for it, some people have been against it, but the against it by far outweigh the others. So
I just want to, Blair was probably going to say this, but the planning commission also reported that they weren't interested in those increases either. Or well, I shouldn't speak for all of them. Two of them? Two of them specifically mentioned that, just for us to consider.
And I agree with Joel's comments. I was on the fence at the beginning, and I would support if we just left it the same.
Yeah, I'm good for leaving as is. That can be adjusted before the final budget's adopted.
thank you.
Can I just say something there? I will not protest this. Everyone knows how I felt about it. I just want maybe the public to realize that it wasn't really an easy discussion to have. It will never be an easy discussion to have. Never. And I just hope that we always have people in office who try their best to do what's best by the residents. There may be a time that people don't feel like there's enough compensation and they will not give their best for the city. So that's all I have to say about that. That's not me. I intend to still do my best. But I'm just saying that in the future, it's a real possibility that people will say, there's not enough in this for me and I just won't do it. So that's my comment.
I think all that needs to be taken into consideration. My mic's off. As I've met in meetings with other mayors in Davis County, practically, and I don't know if they have, but most all of them this year was going to have increases in that compensation package for the council and the mayor. And if you go back, if you go and look and compare South Weber, what they're paying to other cities that are comparable to South Weber is by far way below what is being paid to other cities. I think that you need to, and Blair brought this up during our discussion here a month or so ago, that he didn't feel like, he felt like we didn't want people running for these offices if they were thinking of, the monetary value that they're going to be paid a fair amount, and that's why they were doing it rather than trying to do it because they love the community. But I think you can also say there are those that probably can't run because there is no compensation and they just can't afford the cost of being on it. I think you can look at it both ways. But I think my feeling is the way that inflation is going and cost of living is going crazy everywhere you look. And our economy's not looking too good. And I expressed my thoughts when we had our rate hike on the sewer. Wasn't in favor of that. And so I'm fine. I really am on pulling that out of the tentative budget. So those are my thoughts. So you want to go ahead and do that? Pull that out?
Yes.
Yes, we've got it down.
Okay. Any other reports that anyone likes to make?
I can report on planning commission real quick.
Okay.
If we're doing reports. Just so everyone's aware, and sometimes I get confused on which ones come to city council, so we'll just make sure. At last planning commission, there were two public hearings and some final actions. There was a public hearing for a zone change, a rezone of a small piece of property, which is actually a family piece where they're gonna build on family property by the Belknaps, which is, I think, is a good thing. There's also a rezone request in the area we're discussing earlier tonight from commercial highway and agricultural to residential patio, which is on 7800 South, 2700 East. And I believe most of you are familiar with that. And so be prepared to discuss that. When does that hit the agenda?
That will be on July's
First meeting in July.
May I ask just a quick question to staff? We have that Aon software. Is that how you pronounce it? Aon? Would that be something that I wasn't sure if you saw that email?
Yes, there's a question from the planning commission, and we can run some rough numbers. We can talk about it more in depth on that meeting, but some difficulty is knowing exactly how the commercials could be improved to run the appropriate.
And kind of the way I interpret that without that software, though, is when you look at a property tax standpoint,
That's what I was thinking.
the property taxes on the commercial are going to be far higher than on the residential.
Yeah.
We can't determine what the commercial, because most of what's going to go in there isn't going to be a retail or it's going to be a doctor's office, or it's going to be, the example of an attorney's office was used. Well, we don't get any
Property tax
revenue
only.
from them unless you're going to let someone who generates sales tax revenue.
So,
And so you have to look at it from that property tax standpoint, and you are going to get more from the commercial.
I think the program, I think what would be beneficial for us based on the conversation planning commission had is if we could see property tax values from those, what he brought forward for just those 14 residences, what it would look like if it was a half in terms of property tax, and then what it would look like in terms of just leaving it all commercial.
Yeah, we have that ability, and we can run those numbers. I just want to preface with commercial, it is all dependent on how it's improved, right? So if it is two smaller professional offices, that's going to be different than a large professional office complex versus 4 homes. So it will be a little bit difficult. So I don't want us
Can we
to
get
take
like
those
a like
as perfect, but we'll get a
range?
ballpark. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get a ballpark.
I think that would just be helpful for us to understand how to move forward.
Okay. So there was also an action on a final plat for Peterson Farms. The presentation we all had before, I believe. And then there was also the action on a final plat for Sophia's Haven, which is across the street. So be aware of those and watch for them coming forward.
And they were all recommended?
Yes.
The rezone was
Sorry, you're right. The rezone was what'd they do on that?
The 2-2.
2-2. So it's still coming to us in a tie.
But the other 3 were
Recommended.
recommended.
Recommended approval or denial? Or
Recommended approval.
It's a very important distinction.
Yeah.
I want to reference the 2 finals. there, because of the motions and some outstanding items on the improvement plans, though, until those are corrected, they're not coming to city council, so that they may be at the planning or the city council in July if all of the conditions are met. If not, then they'll be at the next one.
That's all I have.
Okay. Angie, you have any?
No, no, Mayor, thank you.
Quinn?
Mayor, just a brief update on the gravel pit. We had our quarterly meeting with them yesterday, went through some of the history that we've done since we started recording last year. Geneva's made some very good improvements in some of their processing there, and their numbers are been down quite a bit last month or so. And Staker, a couple areas, they've made some improvements that have stayed. They've got some other areas that are still straight downwind of them that are increasing as we get into the hot, dry months. And so we had discussion about other methods of mitigation beyond just water. They're looking at a couple other things that they can do, and so they may be trying out some of those in the coming month or so. So we'll see how that works, but we're still having regular discussions with them. I communicate with them every week, giving them updates on the information that we find, and they share as they make adjustments or have things going on. So, thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Haley?
So just a reminder for Country Fair Days coming up, Monday evening, the council and mayor are serving. So that would be August 1st at the, dang it, don't tell me what it's called. Central Park, and what is it?
So we are serving at the dinner?
Yes.
Okay.
For the Price is Right, that's what it is called. And then the parade on Saturday,
Did she say August 1st?
August 1st, yep. And I was thinking that it would be really awesome, Mayor, if we could maybe arrange like a big gray houseboat to use as our float.
Where could we find one?
Where could we, I don't know where we could find one, but I thought
that
it would be
to give
great.
away as one of the prizes.
That's awesome. I think that's an option too. So just to keep that on your calendars.
So is the dinner on the 1st or is it on the Monday?
Monday the 1st. Did I get my dates right?
Monday's the 4th, I think.
August.
Or nope, I'm in July, sorry.
August
You're right.
1st, yeah. And then August 6th would be the parade. We had our code committee meeting today. We finalized, we created a state of emergency plan for culinary water. If that was the case that we go into where we need further restrictions, we basically put it all in place so that could be enacted immediately. One item that we still need to just discuss is creating fees in our consolidated fee schedule for those emergency time periods. So that is something that we'll be discussing as well in the coming months. And we just started briefly to look over our R7 code as far as in terms of allowing dealer lot lines and the things that will be needed for the Gateway project, as well as just other updates to our R7 code. And then Trevor or Dave, I don't know who, may we get a PR meeting scheduled and get some updated items on that. And I think that's it.
I've gone through most of mine, but I did want to bring up something that we had kind of been talking about and definitely looking into. I think about 2 weeks ago, I asked if Mark could help me understand the base rate for our water rates and understanding what goes into them and how that's formulated. So if we could get to a point where we can actually get some information on that, that not only we could understand what is incorporating that and why our numbers are considerably higher, I would appreciate that. Whether that's in this meeting or in the next meeting, whenever you guys can bring that forward.
May I ask a question on that note? Speaking of PR, that was actually one thing that I wanted to talk about. I think we all get a lot of questions about why our rates are what they are. And based on some information that we got, if we put that on our website, just a brief explanation, if that's something that we discuss in PR, can I get like a straw man, yes, no?
Put what on our website?
Just why our rates are where they are and what goes into our rates, and we keep getting asked
I
why are
mean, you
they
can
so
put the
high?
study in that we did.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's public information. I mean, I
Right.
don't know how you, if
Well,
you try to
there's
do, if
some-
you
there's
try to do a
some-
summary of that, it's gonna be pretty tough.
There's just some rates that we, like our storm drain and stuff is not set by the city. I don't think most people understand that. Same with Robinson Waste. Usually it's just a pass through. For us, at least, I think our last budget was just a pass through on the increased rates. Sorry, not a pass through. The city absorbed the increase and kept it last year, right? Yeah. So anyway, just a brief explanation of where the rates come from and kind of, but specifically with the water, there is some questions as to what that $38 encompasses, which is what I think you're bringing up.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a good question. Just a quick answer is what I said in my email. We have a lower density, so to divide a system that costs X amount of money by 2,000 households versus 20,000 households, it's going to cost more. So that's pretty simple. It's just going to cost more. But as far as the rate goes, we did that, right? I was talking to Blair about this. I was on municipal utilities at the time. The city had just completed that rate study. It was basically a very similar situation that we are with the storm drain. There was nothing as far as a plan.
I think the question is, at least for me, was the contracted rate. Like we know it's $38 and then what we charge on top of that. I think the question is where did we get to the $38? Because
Well,
most
that's in that.
municipalities,
That's part of, that's
in
what I'm
that whole
saying.
Zion's. And we're going to do it again in a year, correct?
Yes.
That whole thing will be reviewed just like we just did the stormwater. And so I'm sitting here going, okay, we're 4 years now into that process, or 3.5, whatever it is. Well, we'll be 5 at the end. That's when we go to do the review, right?
I believe the rate study was done in 2017.
Yes, it was.
Well, but we didn't get to the rates. I haven't been here 5 years, so we
So
didn't
it was
get
finished in 17. You're both right. And then
Oh.
it wasn't adopted till 18.
18, because
Adopted first part of 18. I believe.
18. And so I mean, we're going back and trying to beat
Oh, I
a dead
understand
horse
what
in a
you're
way.
saying, but
We went through this whole process.
Well, then
Go
maybe you
read
can
the
answer the
documents.
question for me then, because the $38 is not the amount that we get directly, or we're directly paying to the Weaver County Basin or the Weaver Basin Water Conservatory. So one else is incorporated into that. And my understanding, or at least my feeling, is that there's other fees, or maybe there's
There's
things-
administrative costs in there. We have to
there
do
could be.
payroll, I mean, billing.
My
Obviously,
big
there's-
question
there's
though
main
is that,
O&M.
is there a bond in there or not? And if there is a bond in there, is that being paid directly from the impact fees, or is that coming from someplace else?
It's coming from a mixture of both, just like was
And
your
is that-
questions were. And it should be paid by both. Because when I read the answer of saying it should all be paid by impact fees, well, I'm currently getting benefit from that service. Why should someone else and a developer be the only ones paying for that bond? I'm still benefiting, you're still benefiting from it. It should be part of that whole thing. That's why you do that. Am I incorrect?
No, you're right. When you do the analysis of an impact fee study, there's a certain amount that's attributable to future development.
Yeah.
The maximum amount of that attributable amount can go towards paying off the bond. Now, exactly, Mac would have to answer exactly, how those checks are cut, but when the analysis was done, yeah, there's a portion of that tank that is paid for by future development, and there's a portion of it that is paid for by the
Current
existing residents.
And I'm sure
I don't-
there's a summary in that, the whole, this
I
rate study we
responded with
did.
email today with some documents. One of those is
Has the rate
Zion's-
study.
Is the Zion's rate study. And to Blair's point, we've already, budgeted for this upcoming fiscal year to go through the process of updated capital facility plan, impact fee facility plan, impact fee analysis, and then utility rate study to see where we're at and where we're at today rather than where we were at that point. So yeah, that is all ready to go. The council's already put that in place that after we complete we just did the stormwater, we're in process of transportation, water was next in line.
So we are going to be looking into it.
Yeah, we'll be
But there is a summary in what you were just given on that rate study of what's included in that rate and why we went to the rates we went to. And they aren't the rates that were published. I mean, I think Haley showed that. I mean, I don't know where the rates came from that were published by Layton City.
Well, that was my bad math, actually.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were actually
sorry.
accurate.
They actually were accurate. I'm just dumb and can't do math. Sorry.
But that example of Layton City wasn't just the base rate, right? They picked a certain gallon.
10,000 gallons, which is
10,000 Yeah, to try to-
fairly high.
To make them look a little bit better and to pass it on.
Well,
Well,
and
and
keep in mind, sorry, that the Layton City doesn't have secondary water, right? So to compare the two is not really fair.
Right.
No, it's not.
I guess my question was, and that's when we were going back at, like, maybe even to 2010, when this water increase of $14, which is when the bond was created, was, okay, is our rate from Weber Basin, $25 like it is for Layton, but we had to put in $14 to cover the bond that we had to create. It's just a better understanding, not trying to point out
Well, it breaks
anything.
down that $14.
The study that we just got in the mail today. I haven't been able to check it out, but
I haven't gone back and reread it, but it does it just like the stormwater.
the stormwater.
Uh-huh.
One piece of information that might be helpful as you look into that study is that in the past, the city would purchase a block of water, from Weber Basin. That's not the process anymore. However, regardless of how we end up with the contracted water, there is an annual maintenance amount. There's an annual payment that, that goes to Weber Basin to have that amount of water, right? So I don't know if it's called a maintenance fee or what, but there is an annual amount. It's an O&M charge that we have from them for that delivery. But anyway, just background as you look into that. And we're happy to answer any questions. And again, know that process is going to be repeated here. It's been 5 years, so we're
In a year.
well, yeah. As soon as the transportation is done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I've got just a couple of items. First, we were down at the auxiliary, where we're doing the auxiliary building down at the fire station yesterday. And I know we didn't want to take out any more trees, but that one big tree on the west end, it's a cottonwood tree, we're gonna have to take it out.
You told me we could say it, so.
Could keep it as true, but as we were on site, there was a lot of dead in there.
If you look at the tree, it's a cottonwood tree, and it really is, almost half of it is dead. And we would definitely have to trim it up, and the side that we would be cutting off is the live side. I think that within a couple of years, the whole tree's gonna be dead. So sorry, unless anybody has real heartburn over it, that tree's coming out.
I don't have heartburn, but I do say if we're going to get rid of a tree, we need to bring in a tree, whether it's there or at another park. So, I mean, we've got a great Veterans Memorial Park that could use a couple more big shade master trees over there on the west side. Help out when people are out there just hanging out or the games.
I would definitely bring it back to that park, because during the old man's baseball game, what do they call that? That's not what they call it. Old timers. That tree is helpful.
Yeah, so, and I think we're technically losing 4 trees over there, so I'm just saying we need to kind of keep track, but.
The other thing, I think it's so close that if we did leave it also, it's gonna be doing damage to that building, so it definitely needs to come out.
Mayor, can I add to your report that one of the items that we did on site there was talk about ways to reduce costs, and we did find a way that we feel like can be adjusted. We had talked about this, the drain in
Drain.
front of the building.
Mhm.
And so we met on site to talk through whether or not that really was a possibility, and it looks like it is. So
So that'll come out.
that was a good cost saving measure
Yep.
that was discussed.
Good, thanks, Dave. Okay, on the sign, this is the rendering, then I didn't bring it last time, from Yesco Signs, so you can kind of look at it, what they're proposed. I've tried to reach back to Matt Wren, and he hasn't returned my call, but I'll stay on him. But that's picture kind of shows what it is now and what it will look like. Now, he's wrong here. It will end right here. He's kind of drawn it to come out, and it can't because of the curb. So the sign would just be pushed right over to that. So you're gonna have this platform. We'd take off the rock down to this concrete. So you wouldn't be able to, that's not gonna be visible unless you walked right up and saw it. So anyway, kind of took a look at that. And I think probably we decided that we would go ahead and pursue that. So maybe, Dave, we should reach out to UDOT, tell them that we can move that
Do we
maximum
need-
of 42 inches and see if.
Do we
they'll-
need to have that laid out and shown to them?
I think now that we have
That
some
rendering.
information from Yesco, we can put together material.
Because
for
we can
UDOT's
modify that plan
consideration.
already that we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can show exactly what the plan is and get essentially a sign off from them that if we did that, what would be the result for us?
Better sightline.
Yeah,
No turn red, we'll probably stay.
so
up.
they were telling us 2 to 3, about 3 feet, and we can get 42 inches, so that's 3.5 feet. So,
That's a very good looking sign.
Better than, they did a better job than I thought they could do with it, I think.
Yeah.
yeah,
It can be done like that.
I think that would work, so. Okay, then the last item on landfill. I had my couple of board meetings and went up and they invited us up to look at the final liner. They're putting in the very last liner that will be installed at the landfill, cell number 4, and showed us the process of doing that. And it's amazing. It's a 3-step process on this liner. And so if anybody in the city is concerned about contamination leaching out of that landfill and coming into our city, it's virtually impossible to do. It really is. After I watched and the testing that they have every 3 or 5 hours, they have to cut out a section of the seam that they make and test that to make sure that it holds. Very expensive. They had a company out of Texas that was doing it. The cost of this final liner is $1.8 million. And basically, the water will come down through the garbage, hit this liner, and then it feeds. And this was new information to me. I don't know if it is to you guys, but all of that water then is collected, comes over, and comes down into South Weaver sewer line. Are you aware of that?
So did the bed
Comes
bugs
down
come with it?
Comes down 1900 and into our sewer system. They said that the water that comes into there is not an extreme contamination, that it's nothing that we really need to worry about. But how many gallons do you think a year goes through that? A lot.
Do you know how many guys?
Brandon, do you know?
I don't know how many gallons, no.
Do you
So
have
they-
a guess?
But I am aware that
Price is right now.
They said on a dry
Wait,
year,
do you have a guess?
Close without going over.
Several million gallons.
I don't have a guess.
Ah, Brandon, no
year.
fun.
in a year, 8 million gallons on a dry year and 13 million gallons on a regular year.
Mhm.
Comes down that.
Are they hoping to support the future infrastructure?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do we take that into account in our CFP?
Right. I was just gonna say that.
They pay accordingly.
They do.
That's my understanding.
I think they do. He said that.
But capacity, is that included in our capacity calculations.
Are you suggesting that they're increasing that?
No, I'm just saying, hopefully,
They would be decreasing our capacity.
yeah,
Well, decreasing our capacity, but, I mean, as far as the impact, it's kind of a one-time thing. So I can't speak to when they first made that connection, if they paid an impact fee, I'm not sure. But in our analysis, we have, meter readings on 1900 is one place that we have. So we do know what we're getting from them and have sized the system accordingly.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answers.
no,
your
that,
question.
yeah, that makes
You
sense.
did.
You're measuring actual flow rather than
Yes.
where it's coming from.
Yes,
So as long as they don't increase.
right. No, we've got actual meter readings, so we're not guessing at that.
Okay. Does anyone know where it's legal to shoot seagulls in Utah?
Not at Burger Bar.
There is one place where it
There's
is
a story
legal to
there.
shoot.
Can we
City
shoot
don't.
seagulls up there?
The landfill has a
Landfill.
permit to shoot seagulls.
Why?
Now, do you want to hear the story about that?
Well,
Oh,
they need to ask all of those neighbors up there.
So this is fun information here. So
I
the,
love it when she says something.
so the general from Hill Air Force Base called and says, you've got to control the seagulls.
'Cause they're hidden.
And so you need to go to the state and get a permit because they're a hazard to the flight zone. So they went to the state and the state says, are you kidding me? That's our state bird. We're not giving you a permit to shoot the seagulls. So they went back to the general and they said, it's a state bird. The general says, give me a few hours. A few hours later, they had a federal permit that they could shoot.
And I'm sure they're only
So
shooting
then-
the California
So
gold.
then the residents up there saw them shooting seagulls and called the state and says, they're shooting the seagulls. So the state comes out and they said, well, we've got a federal permit. And they says, well, wait a minute. Now you've got to have a state permit too. So they had to purchase the state permit as well. They wanted to run. Anyway.
Oh, man.
Okay, that's it.
Good information.
I'm
Thank
done.
you.
So, staff, you got, Dave?
Yes, I think this is an important report, one of my favorites, and Lisa's not going to be happy with me. But Lisa just completed a course and certification that's a really big deal. Would you take a second and describe what it is that you completed and why it's significant?
I just got certified with the state, the UMCA State Recorder Certification. It is a new program they just started. It takes in a certain number of experience and education points, which you gather by experience and education. And it has to be renewed every 5 years. And hopefully it helps me to do my job better.
Very good.
Thank you. That's great, Lisa. We're proud of you. Thanks for doing that. Okay, anything else, Dave?
Not for me.
Nothing else? Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?